What's up, YouTube? It's your boy Disco, and man, a lot of spectacular and not so spectacular things happen in week one. And I'm going to let you guys know this is how you should navigate in your waiver wires for week two to be ready for week two. And I will say, I will premise this with I am not advising you guys based on what happened last week alone, because I promise you right now, you might be pissed off and you might call me an idiot, but Kyron Williams isn't on my list. If you are in a fab league, Kyron Williams, I highly recommend do not invest in. Yes, he was spectacular, but he's going to be free for week three. And I'll tell you why. He's going against the San Francisco 49ers run D. And I don't care if you're Cam Akers. I don't care if you're Saquon Barkley. I don't care if you're Tony Pollard. Whoever goes against that run D is going to suffer. And because people are so emotional and so reactionary, they're going to invest their fab dollars and be idiots by investing their fab dollars in Kyron Williams. They're going to start and flex Kyron Williams, and you're going to be smart because you're going to get Kyron Williams at a discount, at a tremendous value, and he's a great late season stash, but do not waste your fab dollars. Your very, very valuable fab dollars on that guy. Instead, spend it on this guy. This guy is none other than my man, Roschon Johnson. Boom, right there. We're good. So Roschon is a player I was very high on. He had a spectacular outing against the Green Bay defense. And yes, the Chicago Bears stunk it up. The Green Bay Packers defense was absolutely spectacular. But there's a lot to take away from here. One, he got 39% of the snaps, most out of all the Bears running backs. He finished 8th in fantasy points for RBs with 17.5 fantasy points. This is all PPR format, by the way. He had five rushing attempts, 20 yards rushing, 4 yards per rush attempt. He had 1 rushing TD, which was very good. 6 receptions on 7 targets. He tied the team lead in targets at 7. So there was 3 other players that had 7 targets. He brought 6 in, and he had 35 receiving yards. It's only going to go up from here. Not only did he show that he was reliable and that he was phenomenal, he also showed that in the passing game, he is somebody that can be counted on time and time again to protect Justin Fields. Up next, we got Joshua Kelly, and we'll just swing this over here. We'll put, right up here. That's a good place for my head. So he had 48% of the offensive snaps against the Miami Dolphins, and he should see more opportunity because, and I see a spelling error there, but because Austin Eckler is listed as on the injury report with an ankle. I don't know what the details of the ankle are and how bad the circumstances are, but regardless of Austin Eckler being healthy or not, he's getting a lot of utilization, almost half of the utilization in production. He finished 12th in fantasy football in PPR format with 15.1 fantasy points. He had 16 rushing attempts, a whopping 91 rushing yards, 5.7 yards per attempt, 1 rushing touchdown. And he was also targeted once. Should Austin Eckler be actually injured, and the injury is significant, he's going to be a week 2 league winner, guaranteed. He's a spectacular play. I highly recommend you guys, if you do invest your fab dollars, this is one of the guys you want to do it on. All right, next up, Mr. Ezekiel Elliott. Now, in deeper leagues, he's probably not available. But if you got a short bench, this guy should be available. He's available in 43% of Yahoo fantasy leagues and 54% of sleeper leagues with bench roster spots of 5 spots or less. So here's why I like him. Yes, he fumbled, whatever. It was against the Philadelphia Eagles, and they had, let's say, a very good defense last year, and their defense still looks phenomenal this year. But here's why I'm optimistic about Ezekiel Elliott. He had 36% of the offensive snaps against the Eagle and has a far better matchup this week with against a bottom rushing unit of the Miami Dolphins. Last week alone, this week that just passed, there was over 200 rushing yards against that Miami defense, and I'm looking for him to have a tremendous output this week. Last week, he had 7 rushing attempts, 29 rushing yards, so 4.1 yards per average, which is pretty good. He had 7 targets in the pass, 5 receptions, 14 yards. Not so great. The targets is very encouraging, and I assure you his numbers are only going to skyrocket and go up. I would even flex him this week. I would even flex Ezekiel Elliott. Up next, Gus the Bus, Gus Edwards. Tragic news with J.K. Dobbins. Now we know why he was trying to potentially do a hold in or a hold out or whatever the holds. He tore his Achilles. So up next is Gus the Bus, Gus Edwards. He saw 23% of the snaps against Houston. He should see an uptick in usage with the loss of J.K. Dobbins, we just mentioned. He's gone for the season. He averaged 4 yards per carry. Should see more utilization in the receiving game as well. He is competing against Justice Hill, but once again, in terms of every down basis, Gus Edwards, time and time again, is the more reliable, more versatile back. Melvin Gordon, I'm not worried. I think the only time I would be worried for Gus Edwards is should a Leonard Fournette or a Kareem Hunt end up signing to the Baltimore Ravens. But up next, we got Samaje Perine, one of my favorites in the offseason, still one of my favorites. He saw 45% of the snaps against the Raiders. He finished 22nd amongst RBs in PPR format with 11.8 fantasy points. And I want to say the 10 to 12 range is probably his floor for every single game. He had 8 carries for 41 yards. He had a couple explosive plays. He had 4 receptions on 4 targets for 37 receiving yards. That's 9.3 yards per average. He should see an uptick in usage because Javonte Williams, even though he did play, he was taken out in the receiving game. He was taken out in the passing game. Samaje saw a lot of third down usage, and their offense actually started running through him. And when the offense started running through him, they actually started putting up and producing points. So look for Sean Payton to adjust and start utilizing my man, Samaje Perine, once again. Now, he shouldn't really be available in deeper benches or in shorter benches, but if he is, he's available in 23% of the leagues in Yahoo and 11% of the leagues in Sleeper. If he is available in your league, pick him up. Pick him up. He's by far one of the best flex plays on a week-to-week basis. You know his floor is going to be 10 to 12 points every single week. Yes, he's got a tough matchup this week against the Washington Commanders, but I'm not worried. All right, let's talk about wide receivers. And both of these guys are going to be great plays and great stashes for the season. But we got we got a tough matchup this week. They should see a lot of receptions, but I highly recommend, if you got 2 better wide receivers and better matchups, do not start either Puka Nacua or Tutu Atwell. I'll move my my camera over to the other side once I'm done talking about Puka Nacua. So Puka Nacua, he took advantage of Mr. Cooper Kupp not being in the lineup, and he showed to be a very reliable target for Matt Stafford and the Los Angeles Rams. He was on the field for 78% of the snaps. He finished 9th amongst wide receivers in fantasy points with 21.9 fantasy points, which is absolutely spectacular. He had 10 receptions, 119 yards. So that's 11.9 yards per reception. He was targeted 15 times, which is very encouraging. He has a tough week 2 matchup against San Francisco, but he should still produce, I would say, anywhere between 10 to 16 fantasy points. Let's talk about Tutu Atwell. He was on the field for 79% of the offensive snaps, so 1% more than Puka Nacua. He finished 15th amongst wide receivers in fantasy football with 17.9 fantasy points. He had 6 receptions, 119 receiving yards, and he was targeted 8 times. So on the 6 receptions, they were definitely explosive, huge plays. All right, up next, we want to take advantage of injury news, and I feel like both of these names should have an uptick in production. But before we do that, we'll just bring my screen right back over here. Oh, no, not that one. Oh, no, not that one. There we go. Okay. We got Calvin Austin and we got Allen Robinson. Last week was horrible. And if we're going to take any sort of W or victory in terms of our advice here, is they're never going to face San Francisco 49ers defense again in 2023 unless they're playing in the Super Bowl. So it should all be good from here, right? Deontay Johnson is out for a few weeks for the foreseeable future with a hamstring injury. So Calvin Austin should see an uptick, and so should Allen Robinson. Calvin Austin did get 6 receptions. He had 6 targets, and he had 37 receiving yards. Allen Robinson actually looked decent. He actually looked great. He had 5 receptions for 64 receiving yards, 8 targets. Not bad numbers, especially against a formidable defense like the San Francisco 49ers. So I'm very bullish on both of these guys. I'd love to pick either one of them up. I think They'll be good in week 2. And I think they'll actually be great for the rest of the season until Deontay Johnson comes back. But Allen Robinson, even when Deontay Johnson was in there, he was still getting in the mix of things. He was involved in a lot of run blocking. There was a lot of good to take away from both of these guys' performances and both of their usage. And I'm looking for both of their uses to skyrocket. And if you have George Pickens, hold on, because he is going to be bonkers for the next 2-3 weeks. Up next, Demario Douglas. I know everybody's going to say you got to stop with the Demario Douglas stuff, and I won't. I'm not going to do it. There's a lot to take away, and yes, I will say that Kendrick Bourne had a spectacular performance, but there's a lot to take away here for Demario Douglas. He had 41% of the offensive snaps, 40 receiving yards, 7 targets. That's the number that I'm really loving, the 7 targets. He was explosive when he had the ball in his hand, and he finished 4th in yards per separation on routes run. He has a tremendous matchup against the Dolphins. They got a horrible secondary. Once again, if you got any players coming against the Miami Dolphins this year, doesn't matter if it's week 2, week 3, week 15, play them. Doesn't matter if it's a tight end, doesn't matter if it's a wide receiver or running back, play him. And I think based off of his explosive play aspect, the targets alone, he's going to have a spectacular game. I'm super bullish on Demario Douglas this week, and I think that we've only scratched the surface on his potential. To put up 40 yards receiving against the Philadelphia Eagles defense is absolutely spectacular. And I was not high on Mac Jones, but if he's available in your waiver wire and you say you lost an Aaron Rodgers, pick up Mac Jones too while you're at it. Up next, as a wide receiver, Josh Reynolds. He was pretty spectacular. He played 70% of the offensive snaps. He had 80 receiving yards, 7 targets, 4 receptions, clear candidate for the wide receiver 2 in Detroit until Jameson Williams comes back. But even if Jameson Williams does come back, I still think he's going to be the wide receiver 2. He has a tremendous matchup this week against the awful Seattle Seahawks defense. We just talked about the numbers that Tutu Atwell and Puka Nacua put up. So, Amon-Ra St. Brown should absolutely ball out, and so should Josh Reynolds. Up next at the wide receiver position, we got Rashee Rice. The initial outing for the Kansas City Chiefs wasn't spectacular, but once again, everybody's going to be going for one particular player or 2 particular players, like a Puka, like an Atwell. Not everybody's paying attention to the fine details. We've done over 40 hours of research since Thursday, 40 hours of research based off of what's transpired this weekend. So he got 31% of the offensive snaps. He had 29 receiving yards, which isn't spectacular. He had 5 targets, 3 receptions. Though we have a small sample on paper of Rice's outlook, he was the clear-cut most reliable target for Mahomes. Look for his production to increase in week 2 versus a mediocre Jags secondary. If Joshua Downs is balling out against these guys, this guy's going to have a great productive game as well. And if Kadarius Toney gets released, I'm also very bullish on Kadarius Toney. You know why? He got targeted like 9 times. Yes, he dropped almost like all of them, but the utilization is there, and I feel like he's a great later stash. I definitely love him. So let's talk tight ends. Sam Laporta. Are you a Laporta supporter? I'm a Laporta supporter. He showed that he was a clear-cut tight end 1, rookie or not. He finished in the where I have him finishing. He had 83% of the offensive snaps. Finished week 1 as the 8th best tight end with 8.9 fantasy points in PPR format. Once again, he had 5 receptions on 5 targets, so you know he's reliable. You know he's going to come down with it. He had 39 receiving yards, 7.8 yards per average. He was reliable in the offense and should see more utilization, not just in week 2, but for the rest of the season. Once again, they have a tremendous matchup against a pretty awful Seattle Seahawks secondary. So I really like him there. Up next, let's talk more tight ends. This is one of the last tight ends we're going to talk about. Hunter Henry. Love the Hunter Henry upside. And yes, there's 3 Patriots on the list. So what? Yeah, I'm a Patriots fan, but this isn't because I'm a homer. This is because these guys are actually producing, and they all produce against a really good defense, and they have one of the worst defenses to go against. So he had 79% of the week 1 offensive snaps. He finished week 1 as the tight end number 1 in fantasy football with 16.6 fantasy football points. He had 5 receptions on 6 touchdowns. He had 1 receiving touchdown. He had 56 receiving yards, 11.2 yards per reception. He excelled in horrible weather conditions against the top Eagles defense, looking for him to have a better outing against the Finns. And if he's going to have a better outing than a tight end number one outing, you should buy. There are some honorable mentions. There are definitely some honorable mentions. I'll start by saying Mac Jones. I know I alluded to him earlier, but Mac Jones is definitely an honorable mention. Another honorable mention would have to be Adam Troutman. Adam Troutman is now the clear-cut tight end number one because Greg Dulcich is out for the foreseeable future with an injury. So those are my honorable mentions. I would also say if Jaden Reed is available in your leagues, invest, get some Jaden Reed. But other than that, if you like the video, like the freaking video. And if you guys got any questions, you can find me on all socials. And yeah, hopefully this advice helped you guys beat your idiot league mates. See you guys next time.